Hi guys, welcome back. In this lesson we're going to look at slash chords. So I was just playing the A section of the jazz ballad My One and Only Love, which contains 6 slash chords. There's something about slash chords that seem to baffle jazz students when they first come across them, and you'll be happy to hear that slash chords are actually really easy to play once you understand what they mean. Although they can sometimes look quite confusing, after this lesson you should have no trouble at all finding the right chord. So I'm going to start off by giving you an introduction to slash chords. I'm then going to explain the different types of slash chords that you'll come across, and then we're going to look at slash chords in the context of a jazz standard. So all slash chords contain 2 bits of information. The first letter, which is on the left-hand side of the slash, indicates what chord should be played, and the second letter, which is on the right-hand side of the slash, indicates the notes that should be played underneath the chord, so that would be in your left hand or in the bass. So looking at this example, we have C over E. This simply means a C major triad in your right hand, and you play an E with your left hand, so that's the bass note. So there's 2 categories of slash chords. The first category is when the bass note is part of the chord to the left of the slash. So when this is the case, the chord is simply an inversion. So let's have a look at a few examples. Using the first example we looked at, which is C over E. So E is the third of C. So that means that the bass note is one of the chord tones. So that means you could play it like this, or you could invert the C triad and play it like this, or it could simply be asking for a C major triad in its first inversion. So that way we have E on the bottom. So that could be C over E. Looking at another example, we have G over D. So that wants a G major triad in our right hand over D in the bass. So D is the 5th of G, so it's one of the primary chord tones, it's the 5th. You could also play it down here, or you could just play a second inversion, G triad. So we have D in the bass. Another example would be F minor over A flat. So we have F minor in the right hand and A flat in the bass. We could also play that like this, or we could play it like this. So we have A flat is the lowest note, and then we have the other notes of the F minor triad. So remember that if the bass note is part of the chord, then you just need to play an inversion of the chord that's on the left-hand side of the slash. So the second type of slash chord is when the bass note is not part of the chord to the left. So i.e. that's the bass note is not one of the primary chord tones. So when this is the case, you should always analyse the chord as if the bass note is the root of the chord. So let's look at a few examples in the key of C. First of all, we have G over C. So that's asking for a G major triad over C in the bass. So we could play that like this, or like this. So if we analyse the notes, we have the root C in our left hand. Remember that if the bass note isn't part of the chord, then we have to analyse it in terms of the bass notes. So we have C, which is the root. Then we have the major 7th, the 9th, and the 5th. So I would interpret that as a C major 9 without the 3rd. So you could use that in a 2-5-1 progression. D minor 9, G13, and then G over C. So the next example we have E over C. So that's asking for an E major triad in the right hand over C in the bass. So it's quite a harsh sounding one. If we analyse the notes, we have the root, which is C. Then we have the major 3rd, the sharp 5th, and the 7th. So that makes this a C major 7 sharp 5 chord. It's quite an unusual chord, you don't really play it that often, but it does exist. So next we have B flat over C. So that's asking for a B flat major triad over C in the bass. So if we analyse the notes, we have C, which is the root, we have the flat 7th, the 9th, and the 11th. So that makes this a C9 sus chord. So the easiest way to play a sus chord is to play the root, and then a major triad a whole step below the root. So in this case, we'd have a B flat major triad. So I have created a lesson on sus chords. If you want more information on why we use them and when's good to use them, then I'd check that lesson out. Yeah, sus chords, they have a really interesting floating quality because it's sort of halfway between the 2 and the 5 chord. So it is a functioning dominant chord because we have the root C and we have the dominant 7th, but there's no third in there. So there's no normal third. It's been replaced by the 4th, but that would function as a dominant chord, which would resolve to a major chord a 5th below, or a minor chord. So next we have D over C. So that's asking for a D major triad over C in the bass. That's another fruity sounding one. If we analyse the notes, we have the root, which is C, and then we have the 9th, the sharp 11th, and the 13th. So remember that on major chords, we don't play the natural 11th because it's very dissonant. We play the sharp 11th. So this makes this chord a C major 13 with a sharp 11. So something to be aware of is that slash chords are commonly used as shorthand. So if you're reading a lead sheet and you come across C major 13, sharp 11, that's a lot of information to process. You have to think, right, we want a C major chord, and then we want the sharp 11 and the 13 in there. But if you read D over C, it tells you the exact same chord, but just with much less information. So as you're exposed to more slash chords, you'll be able to quickly analyse them in terms of the extensions and the alterations. So now let's have a quick look at 7th slash chords. It's also common to have 7th chords within slash notation. So these are dealt with in the exact same way that we deal with the triads. So here's a couple of examples. The first example, we have F sharp minor 7 over A. So A is the third of F sharp minor. So that means we could play the chord like this. So that's simply an inversion. Another way we could play it is to put A in the bass and then play F sharp above it. We could also invert that as well and play it like this. So another one where the bass note is not part of the chord would be B flat major 7 over C. So this is similar to the C9 sus, but this time it's B flat major 7. And this creates a C13 sus. So it's basically, we've got the root of the chord, we've got the 7th, the 9th, the 11th, and the 13th. So it's another very colourful chord, and it would function as a dominant chord. So you could play that instead of C7. So slash chords are also used to create a specific movement in the bass line, which is usually chromatic or by steps. So whenever you come across a slash chord, analyse the bass movement in the progression to see where it's going. So looking at the opening bars of My One and Only Love that I was playing in the intro, I've highlighted the roots of the chords or the implied bass note. So we can see that the slash chords create a descending stepwise bass line. So I'm going to play just the roots and the implied bass notes so you can hear it. So we have C major 7 to start, so the root would be C. Then we have C over B, so B is the bass note, so we play that down here. Then A minor 7, A minor over G, so G is the bass, D7 over F sharp, G7 over F, C over E, and F major. So now let's add the melody in. So there's quite a few different ways we could play this. You could play it like this as well. C over B, A minor. So that's D7 over F sharp. So that would be, that's a root position D7 chord. If we put it in its first inversion, we have the F sharp on the bottom. So we can play the F sharp and then hit that first inversion. The same with the G7 over F. Here's G7. We can take the F and put it on the bottom. So that's the third inversion, and that would work well for G7 over F. So let's listen to that again. So moving on, we have C over E. So I've just played E in the bass, and then a first inversion C major triad, which has E on the bottom. That's just a left-hand voicing for F major. So one final way we could play it would be to move the melody up, and then we can play the chords in their inversions here to achieve the descending bass line movement. So we could start off with a C major 7 like that, so we're just playing the root and third, then C over B, then A minor 7, so there's no 7 in there, but we've got the roots, the 9th, the 3rd, and the 5th. It's quite a nice sound. And then A minor over G, so we can just play a left-hand voicing for a rootless A minor 7. So we have the 7, the 9, the 3, and the 5. And then we can move down to D7 over F sharp, G7 over F, C over E, and then back up to F. So let's see how this sounds. So you're probably wondering what the best way to practice slash chords is. Well, I'd recommend just flicking through your jazz fake book and look out for any occurrence of slash chords. When you find one, analyse the chord, work out whether the bass note is part of the left of the chord to the left of the slash. If it's not, see if you can work out what chord is being implied. So then make sure you look at the bass line, see if there's any implied bass line movement, and then just try and play the measure where the slash chord appears. So if you'd like more information on the tune that I was playing, so My One and Only Love, I've actually created a dedicated tutorial to that. So I'd go and check that lesson out next if you want a more detailed sort of practical application of slash chords to a jazz standard. So if you have any questions with that stuff, feel free to drop it in the comment box below.